Grapplingtube. I'm Randy Hughes, sitting down with Jeremy Watkins with a little segment we like to call Meet the Professor. You've got a school, you're my professor, Watkins Wrecking Crew, and you're not only a jiu-jitsu coach, but you're also a jiu-jitsu dad. And
yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about the balance between being professor, coach, and dad?
I can try. I don't know that there's a great balance. It's just busy. So I'm constantly running my daughters all over the place for their training, their lifting, nutrition, and then trying to make sure that I give enough time to my students to coach and just work with them one-on-one. So it's just, I don't know, I'm always going like all day long from about 6 in the morning till I get home a little after 9 p.m. every day, just working with my girls and all of my students.
You both girls are amazing competitors, and you're well known for that. What do you see as a future for each of them?
Well, they both have different goals. Hannah's still kind of young, so trying to figure things out, but she really loves the no-gi and hopes to chase down ADCC title. But the goal has always kind of been for the both of them to work toward gi world championship as a black belt. And so Layla's, pretty close to that now. She's about 3 years out from black belt. And we have a very specific path that she's chasing to kind of close the gap on the experience level of black belts who are competing currently. It's a very different path than most juveniles. We kind of laid out something as we talked about moving to purple belt instead of blue belt, and it would give her, if she's able to win World Pro, the opportunity to compete against the elite black belts now as a purple belt. And so she would get the experience she needs to close the gap instead of waiting a few years down the line after becoming a black belt to close that gap on experience and then eventually start winning. We're hoping year one as a black belt. Let's see, what year is that going to be? 24, 25. So 26. So in 2026, year one, we're hoping she can get that first black belt world title and take out some of the best in the game. Year one.
Now, along that path, your girls are dieting, exercising, training. They're homeschooled, so they get a lot of jiu-jitsu as well. How do you keep them from burning out along the way?
Well, I don't really have to do much of anything. My girls are different than most kids. They're driven. They want to do jiu-jitsu all day, every day. There's never a point when they're like, I don't want to train, or I'm not feeling it. Even when they're injured, which both of them are dealing with injuries right now, they still want to train, full time. They still want to be on the mats, and they should probably be taking time off to heal, but you can't keep them away. So I haven't ever really had that issue because they're just driven. I haven't pushed, forced them to do anything, just encouraged. And I think that really helps. Instead of me forcing them in, I'm encouraging them, trying to help motivate them, find things that they really like about it so that they're, wanting to chase things down, come up with plans like we've done, for, like I said, Layla, have a very specific plan so she can see, okay, step by step, throughout the year, here's where I'm supposed to be so that I can, reach that goal of closing the gap on black belts by the time, I'm a black belt in 3 years. And so it just kind of keeps them moving forward. So there's never really a chance for them to just face burnout. I think a lot of kids who do face burnout, there's no real goals. And because there's no real goals moving forward, like maybe competition goals and things like that. And, being that we're very competition focused, that's, I think, important. If there's not any real goals, then eventually they're just like, well, why am I doing this? I've been doing this for years, and they kind of get, like you said, burnout. So my girls never really have that because they always have a goal right in front of them.
That's good, and I do believe they'll be world champs.
I hope so.
Now, as you progress and you have to adapt your game as jiu-jitsu evolves, and you're doing that with your girls as well, how do you stay up to date on the latest techniques and the cutting edge techniques out there?
Yeah, I'm always studying. So I watch competitions and competition matches all the time. So I'm always watching Gi Worlds. We watch the best female athletes, male athletes, and study them, study their games, see what's working. I watch all of the ADCC trials and worlds events so that, and I'm at a lot of those things so I can watch it firsthand, but I'm always constantly studying. Even the pro scene, like Who's Number One and ONE FC and all of those types of events. We're watching those all the time too, just see, what people are using, gi and no gi, what the common metagames are, and then how can we manipulate, modify so that we can get an edge on people.
Shifting gears a little bit, you're an older professor. I mean, not older, but as far as jiu-jitsu mileage.
I am older, man. Everybody I'm around, I'm older than all of them.
But you're on the mat every day. You're rolling every day. How do
Yeah.
you keep on the mat? Keep away from injuries and keep engaged with your students and rolling all the
Well,
time?
I can't say that I stay away from the injuries. I'm just as injured as anybody else in jiu-jitsu, but I do know my limits. So, and especially over the last year and a half or so, I've slowed down quite a bit because I feel it now. So I can't do 2-a-days every single day like I used to, but I do make sure I get my training in every single day, and I just listen to my body. So when my body's saying, hey, you need to take it back a notch a little bit, then I'll watch who I roll with and how many times I'm rolling, so that I can make sure I'm training every day and not, having to skip. But it's always just modifying so that my body can, handle it. But it's just listening to my body.
Speaking of training, you have quite a unique streak going on with your runs. Tell me about that. How did you get onto that program, and what's
Sure.
your streak look like now and your longest to date?
So my buddy Marty Reeves, he 5 years ago started a streak, and he's still going on his streak. 5 years in now, he hasn't missed a single day. And so I was inspired. I'm like, I'm a runner. I like to run. I've run a couple marathons and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? I've never tried that before, where I just run literally every single day. It was like 4 days a week, I'd run, or 5 days a week, but I always had time off. But it's like, well, I'll give it a shot. And so that first streak I did was 518 days in a row. And then COVID hit and kind of screwed everything up for me, both work and, family life and everything. So my streak stopped. I tried to do another streak about a year into COVID, and I ended up with a pretty bad infection in my knee, staph infection, and my knee blew up, so I couldn't continue my streak. It was only about 100 days. And then I just started another streak 257 days ago. So I'm 257 days into my current streak.
Oh, that's impressive. Speaking of COVID, your school, just like many others and many other businesses, took a big hit during that time.
Yeah.
What would you say was crucial to keeping or the main driving force to keeping your doors open and keeping, the business alive?
Well, it was really difficult. Like during COVID, when it hit, we had a completely different school than we do now. We were very Taekwondo heavy, and we had an after-school program. And the after-school program was our primary source of income. At the time, it was probably 60% of what all we brought in. And once COVID hit, we lost that like 100%, and it never came back. And so it kind of just sped up the process of what we intended to do in the first place. Eventually, we were going to phase out the after-school program so we could travel more with the girls as they got older and they were pursuing their careers. And so COVID just kind of put us on the fast track. But keeping our doors open was just my test of perseverance. Like, we were just determined. We had to go and pursue a variety of different things, a few of the grants and things that were out there just so we could get through, that first year. Because there were several months where we just really didn't have much of anything coming in. But we had faithful students, like a handful of faithful students that said even during the time they would continue to support us. And they did support us throughout that first year of COVID. And so that really helped us keep our doors open. We tried to do some online stuff, and we did that for a good while, but that wasn't really all that successful because just didn't have the platform for it. Yeah, and so it was just a test of perseverance. We just like, we're going to do this no matter what. But we did have to make some changes. With the after school program gone, we discussed who was going to go out and find additional work, and it ended up being that my wife graciously said she would go back into teaching full time, and so she had to work on getting her certification, and she ended up finding a great job that she loves. But that allowed me to focus on the gym and just rebuilding it, rebranding it, and moving in a new direction. And so throughout COVID, we ended up making a shift to more of a jiu-jitsu focus. And we had tons of people coming to us for jiu-jitsu, primarily for our kids and teens program, because we were successful with all of that at the highest level in competition. And so we just kind of took off from there. It was basically a restart for us.
Well, that's amazing, and shout out to Renee for taking one for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
Speaking of rebrand, you've got your nice new emblem. I like it. I like it a lot better than the old one. Mm-hmm. It's cool. But you mentioned to me that this was part of a longer game where you wanted to have affiliates, and you wanted to have schools open up under the Wrecking Crew banner. You have your first now, East Texas Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us how that came to be and what you see for them as a future?
Sure. First, I didn't ever envision bringing in an affiliate that was people outside of our gym. So I never had the goal to go out and find schools like a lot of teams and affiliations do, and recruit schools like that. That was never my mindset. I didn't ever want to have anything to do with that. My mindset was, I'm going to build up the best of the best competitors, and when they go off and they make a name for themselves and they want to open their own gym, then I would support them 100%, and they would be an affiliate of ours if they chose to be, and I would just help them get their school off the ground. So that was always my mindset as far as starting an affiliation. Is anytime I have like my juveniles become adults and then they're winning like world championships and they're doing great, I want to help them be successful and open their own gym down the line. Well, this kind of just dropped into our lap, with East Texas Wrecking Crew, and it was a unique experience. One of my students was approached about helping kind of restart a school that was in danger of closing down and just moving in a different direction. So she agreed to do it, and this is my student Sarah Torgressa. She said yes, and I was like, okay, well, she is my student, so I guess this will be our first affiliate. I'll take her and the gym under our wing, and I'll help them get off the ground and move in the right direction and be able to accomplish everything they want to as a gym. And it just kind of all fell together in a very fast way. It's been in the last 2 months. It all came together, and it came together so fast.
Oh, that's pretty quick. Speaking of your students, some of your teens and juvenile classes, kids classes, they're quite large. How do you make sure that every kid gets the instruction needed?
Yeah, my approach to teaching is I stick with a concept, for a month or two at a time. And so we just kind of gradually ramp up the details of the concept as we go through that month or two. So we start out really small and we just build. And then I have great help, with my juveniles who help consistently in my juniors jiu-jitsu program. And they're all phenomenal competitors in their own right. And they know my fundamentals so well, and then they also know the advanced stuff, the modern stuff that I teach on a regular basis, and they know a lot of details. They can share things and help in ways that most wouldn't be able to. And so I'm grateful for the help that I have of my juveniles, but just I think also sticking to a concept or two for a month or two at a time really helps, because then I can just reemphasize. And so kids get it, usually they're understanding fairly well, maybe not 100%, but fairly well at the end of those 2 months. And then they'll get one-on-one with my juvenile instructors and myself, who walk around the room and just work one-on-one with a group of 2 at a time.
Not only juveniles, but you started to grow. You've got a lot more adults now and masters. How do you tailor the instruction for different body types, athletic ability, ages, and
Yeah, I'm always thinking about that. Like, I think about competition. So we tailor what we do toward competition. And that's always my mindset, is I want my students, if they choose to compete, to be at a very high level. And so I'm always thinking about the concepts that will make anyone, successful in competition, whether they're 60 years old or they're, 5 years old. And we try and break it down to like fundamental components that anyone can get. But some of my classes, like my younger kids, they will get less details but same technique. So we won't go as far. With my juveniles, I go like really far. I give them everything in the kitchen sink. And then with my adults, I go as far as they can handle. So when they start asking questions, I give them more. But it's always the same material. I just break it down into different components and different details for each class so that everybody can get something out of it for that month or 2 at a time that we're working on something.
so that's a good philosophy. I like that. One thing I liked when I came into this school was that, as a white belt, you were thrown right into whatever concept you were working that week, and so you might not get to a basic fundamental for a while, and so you're immediately exposed to all areas of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I like that. If you had to break it down to like the most simplest form of jiu-jitsu, what would you say? What would you say in terms of strategy would be your philosophy? Would it be like limb control? Would it be position? Would it be like what would you break it down to
You
be
mean
like?
my philosophy in what I teach?
Yes.
Okay. So I generally have a different approach to jiu-jitsu than the majority of professors out there. My philosophy is guard first. So everybody from day one is learning guard first. A lot of people, they might think it's better to focus on things like defense first and escapes. But my mindset has always been, guard first, because I believe that the guard sets our grappling art apart from all other grappling arts. It's unique, but it also gives, when you start from day one, it gives competitors an edge. Because a white belt going into competition, if they've focused 100% on guard pulls and attacks from the guard, sweeps, submissions, back takes, they're going to have an edge on somebody who's only focused on, takedowns and escapes and whatnot, because they're not going to have anything else. And so when and I've experienced this, I can't tell you how many times in competition coaching my students, when they pull guard, they just took away, best weapon of their opponent, who was anticipating a battle on the feet to take people down. And so my mentality is always teach guard first, and I start with our fundamental position, which is close guard. So we work close guard, how to get there, how to keep the position, and how to attack from the position. And so you learn those 3 components to the close guard, which, by the way, those 3 components are what we apply to everything we teach here at the academy. Can you get there? Can you keep the position? Can you attack from the position or finish from the position? And so they learn how to, get to close guard. They learn how to keep it. Then they learn a variety of different attacks, which we would consider our fundamentals. And then as they get those things down, they branch out to more of the open guards and how to attack from the open guards and stuff. And then as they are sweeping and coming up, they're learning how to chain together their sweeps with passes, and then transitions to things like the back and whatnot. And so it's always just a progression. And anytime, like you said, people come in, they're white belt, they get thrown into the deep end, and they're learning, X guard, which is what we're going over right now. That wouldn't necessarily be a fundamental. So what I would do is I'll incorporate something from our fundamentals into the X-Guard curriculum for the next 2 months. So we'll go back and we'll discuss a fundamental, how to get to close guard from the X-Guard, and so then they're getting to learn some of the fundamental attacks from the close guard as well, and they're building that fundamental game, the basics of what I would consider basics of jiu-jitsu. And so that's kind of my approach to it.
Cool. Our channel, Grapplingtube, it focuses on every aspect of grappling, judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Do you think that there's something that each sport could learn from the other, like the intensity of wrestling or the technique of jiu-jitsu or judo? What would you say that would be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can gain, details and information from any of the grappling arts because they all have a different focus. Like I said, just from our gym alone, we focus primarily on the guard. That's what we spend all of our time on, is the guard. But if you were to go to somebody else's gym, whether it's a jiu-jitsu gym, a judo gym, or a wrestling club, you're going to get something completely different. And those are things that you can add into your game, your grappling game, whether it's gi or no gi at any point. So yeah, I think absolutely you can add things in.
Just to bring it full circle, bring us back to what started you into martial arts.
Oh, okay. So I started the martial arts when I was 16, but I've always been interested in the martial arts, watching Bruce Lee movies, Chuck Norris movies, just all of the early stuff. So I loved the martial arts as a kid. But I would say the one thing that got me into the martial arts is every year they have this tournament. It's called the U.S. Open. It's an open karate tournament, and they would broadcast, a good portion of it on ESPN. So it was on ESPN like years and years ago, and I saw a couple of those events, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to try this. And so one of the elements that I really liked was the breaking world championship. And so after watching that a number of times, I'm like, I eventually want to try that. I want to do that. I want to get on that stage. So it's, biggest breaking championship in the world. It's the world championship. And so I eventually got into Taekwondo because I always enjoyed the kicking element of Taekwondo. And I felt like, when I was younger, I had strong legs. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to try an art that, I can use my legs in. And so Taekwondo was it. So I jumped into Taekwondo early, and I trained it on and off since I was 16. I trained in Arizona is where I got started. And then I moved here in my late teens, and then I got back into Taekwondo when I was here when I was in my early 20s and married. And then from here I moved to Utah and I started again. So it's just on and on. But when I finally moved down to the New Orleans area, I found my current instructor, Brian James, and I've been with him for the last like 15 years. And so I've been doing Taekwondo, on and off since 16. But I got started in jiu-jitsu when Brian decided he wanted to learn jiu-jitsu and incorporate that into his academy down in, like I said, the New Orleans area. And so he and I were primary training partners, and we were under a guy out of Florida and learning, distance learning, I guess you could say, under him for a number of years. And so I kind of got started in, I think it was 2008 in jiu-jitsu. And I've been doing that ever since. And then it kind of gradually shifted from Taekwondo focus to more of a jiu-jitsu focus, but I still love both. And I will say that one tournament that I wanted to get into, from early days of seeing it on ESPN, I've competed twice on that stage. I had to earn my way in, and competed on the breaking world championship 2 times, and actually placed. I placed 3rd,
That's incredible.
in the biggest stage in the world. So that's my story.
Yeah, dreams realized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for sitting down with us. Do you want to give a shout out to anybody? And if people want to contact your school, is there a website they can go to or an Instagram?
Sure. You can go to watkinswreckingcrew.com. All of our information's on there. Our Instagram is Watkins Wrecking Crew. You can always email the school, message the school, but everything's online. So WatkinsWreckingCrew.com, and then our Instagram is Watkins Wrecking Crew. You can find us on Facebook the same way, Watkins Wrecking Crew Martial Arts. But yeah, that's it.